Hello, welcome everyone. This is the International Peace Coalition. This is the 119th meeting that we've had consecutively. My name is Anastasia Battle. I'll be your moderator today, as well as Dennis Small and Dennis Speed, my co-moderators. And in the trying times that we're seeing right now with extreme events, with assassinations, with the outbreak of potential nuclear war, but also more positive courses of things, I think it's important that we remind ourselves again why we are doing this, why we created this forum 119 weeks ago, which is to unite the peace movement, people across the political spectrum of many different philosophies, religions, nations, wherever you're coming from. If you are for true peace, you are welcome here. And this idea of unifying people around the world towards this cause is so important, so vitally important. And please take a moment today to share this invitation with your friends, your organizations, reasonable enemies, people that you can actually see yourself speaking to, even though you disagree, which is what we're doing here. And everyone from that perspective is welcome. So to start us off today, we have Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who is the founder of the Schiller Institute and the initiator of the International Peace Coalition. Please go ahead, Helga.
Well, thank you, and hello to all of you. I think we all are aware of the fact that the world is completely out of order, and we are in what you could call the law of the jungle. Just to highlight the many developments, we had the supposed Russian drone attack on Polish territory, which some call the biggest incident since the founding of NATO in 1949. We had the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which clearly has far-reaching significance as a message to all politicians in the United States and elsewhere. We had the Israeli attack on Qatar. We have the destabilization of more countries, Nepal, Serbia. We have threats against Brazil, Venezuela. So it is not an exaggeration to say that we are really looking at a very far-reaching breakdown of the international order. I should have mentioned the French situation, which is close to ungovernability, and the potential explosion of the everything bubble. We also have the formation of a positive alternative, but let me first go through some of the highlights of where the present destabilizations are. On Wednesday, September 10th, there were several Russian drones entering the Polish airspace, about 16. They were intercepted in northwest Ukraine. And according to some experts, they were, misdirected by the Ukrainian air defense, so that they lost direction and flew into Ukraine. That is one explanation. They were downed one way or another. Either they collapsed by themselves or they were brought down by the Polish air defense. In any case, no significant damage was done, not to materials, not to people. And there are now confirmed reports that there was an immediate contact between the military of Belarus and the Polish military. The Belarus military warned the Polish that some Russian drones were probably intercepted by electronic countermeasures and were therefore flew into Polish territory. Now, the chief of the Polish General Staff confirmed the receipt of such a statement. So nobody was immediately affected, and nobody was damaged. But that did not prevent the war hawks in the West to go into an unprecedented, hysteria, saying, Spiegel, for example, Spiegel magazine in Germany wrote, Russian drones over Poland. German politicians warn of escalation of the war. The worst of all was the Economist, who wrote, "This is the most serious incursion since NATO, into NATO territory since its founding in 1949. Polish Prime Minister Tusk said, Poland is the closest to a conflict since World War II, and he called for a full mobilization of NATO and the invoking Article 4 of NATO." The Economist wrote further, "We are only one step, this is only one step further in the larger war with Russia, which Russia is planning to launch against Europe." The British Defense Secretary John Haley said the Ukraine armed forces will bolster NATO air defenses over Poland. The German media and radio, TV, they were so over the top that I want to spare you these statements. President Trump, on the other side, said it could very easily have been a malfunction of these drones, and the Russian government basically said that they had given no such order to direct drones against Polish territory. Now, but that did not, prevent the war faction of the coalition of the willing and their minions in the media to try to increase the hysteria about the certain upcoming war with Russia. Therefore, I think Robert Fico, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, demanding an independent investigation is very much on the mark. Now, in another probably related incident, even so not apparently related, was the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who, headed a very large organization of young people, students called Turning Point USA. He was able to build up 3,500 chapters on campuses across the United States, and he's a, very important element of the MAGA movement. So he was shot dead. President Trump immediately reacted to that and said that his administration will find each and everyone, including the organizations that were funding this whole operation. And basically he accused the left, in quote, or the political opposition to be behind that in some way or another, which was not exactly helpful, given the already extraordinary polarization inside the United States, which through this murder is now reaching a dangerous new state where we have, just reports from on the ground where people on the left, religious organizations, others basically say that there were some celebrations about the killing of Charlie Kirk, reflecting the deep confusion in the population and being hyped up beyond reason. Now, basically, Kirk had warned earlier, already some years earlier, that there were death threats against him. He had written on Twitter that there was, such a death threat, and he referred to that person. And it turns out that that person was a Las Vegas resident called Ashton Kirillo, previously Sarah Ashton Kirillo, and the Kirk, who was a friend, long-year friend of then Senator and now Vice President J.D. Vance, had already written in 23 to President Biden and also Secretary of State Blinken, warning about this person. Now, this person, Ashton Kirillo, may or may not be related to that, but it is clear that such an environment was there. And it has been noted by Senator Alexei Pushkov, the chairman of the Information Committee of the Russian Federation Council, that this murder represents, in his view, a clear message to President Trump and all prominent figures of US public life who have similar views, but he thinks the main address is a warning to President Trump. And there were already 2 assassination attempts on President Trump recently. Now, the other major development which caught the headlines and is a serious step further in the direction of law of the jungle was the attack by Israel on Qatar, on the building where the Hamas leadership was meeting, basically the negotiators for a possible deal with the Israelis on the hostages. Now they were supposed to be killed. They were not killed. Only the son of one Hamas leader was assassinated. But naturally, this is an unbelievable event. If you all of a sudden bomb Qatar, which is said to be one of the closest, absolute closest allies of the United States, when they give their services to negotiate a very desperate situation, and naturally the Prime Minister of Qatar said this attack killed all hopes for the hostages, and he is now demanding that Prime Minister Netanyahu is brought to justice. This action was condemned by all Arab states, and it definitely has made everything much more difficult, because who now wants to offer his services for negotiations? If you move the negotiations to Cairo, you get bombed in Cairo. If you do it in Amman, you get bombed in Amman. So, if this is not, undone with appropriate measures, it means that the world has plunged one more step into the direction of the law of the jungle. Now, the big question actually was, did President Trump know? But there were contradictory remarks, and now the story is, it's not very clear if it's true or not. In any case, that Trump was warned too late when the rockets were already in the air, and therefore the warning to Qatar came after after the attack had occurred. Now, the only plus point is that for the very first time, the UN Security Council meeting, which was immediately called, the 5 permanent members for the first time, all 5 voted condemning the Israeli action. That's the first time the United States took a clear position against what Israel had done. But it's obviously very far from remedying the situation. And as you know, now the UN General Assembly has started, and many organizations, including the IPC, are demanding the Uniting for Peace resolution, the resolution 377, whereby the power to decide would be shifted by a 2/3 majority vote in the UN General Assembly from the UN Security Council to the UN General Assembly to take measures to remedy the situation. Now, there is a full mobilization for that in motion, and we will discuss this obviously today as well. Now, the only extremely positive development, and that belongs to the world picture, is the fact that we should not forget that this entire strategy of tension, which includes, the pushing up the Russian supposed drone attack on Poland, the killing of Charlie Kirk, the attacks on Qatar, the destabilizations of Serbia and Nepal, the attacks in Latin America against Brazil and Venezuela, all of that is, I think the common denominator is that it is in reaction to the fact that a new world economic system is emerging with this SCO meeting in Tianjin, China at the beginning of September, and the subsequent announcements, that this organization is planning to create a new bank, a new SCO bank, to generate credit for infrastructure and other development. And it is a new system which is emerging of countries who, in unity with the BRICS, with the Eurasian Economic Union, with ASEAN, with CELAC, with the African Union, with other words, with organizations of the Global South, are in the process of organizing a new system based on the UN Charter, based on new principles of the 5 principles of peaceful coalition tradition, but basically as a clear answer to the attempt to establish an unipolar world by the West in the post-Cold War period. Now, there is one new development which I think is of the highest importance, and that is that President Xi Jinping has added to his 3 global development initiatives, the Global Development, Security, and Civilizational Initiative, a 4th one, the Global Governance Initiative. And I would suggest to everybody to read this in great detail. It's an enormously impressive document which elaborates in great detail how the international system, how the international relations among states can be organized based on sovereignty, based on respect for the different social system, non-interference, equal vote, no matter if it's a big or small country, no decisions made over the head of affected countries. In any case, it's a very, very detailed blueprint of how to organize a new security and development architecture, which I have been asking for since the special military operation started in February 22. And it is together, I would say, with the 10 principles, an implementation. How would you sit down on the negotiation table like they did in the Peace of Westphalia, sorting out all territorial, historic, and other conflicts by having a structure where everybody feels that they are represented and that their interest is taken care of, no matter if they are a big country or a small country. And I think that this is an absolute workable paper to come to a new security and development architecture. So I would urge all the members of or participants in the IPC to please, for the next time, next Friday, study this paper, because I think it deserves to be made known in the whole world. And it gives more ammunition to the recent call by the Schiller Institute that the Western countries must join with the global majority in the new system if we are supposed to come out of this crisis. So I think while we are faced with an unbelievable danger, there is also absolutely light at the end of the tunnel and a way how we can get out of it. And I think we have to discuss both the dangers to world peace, but also emphatically we have to discuss the solutions, how we get out of it, because many members of the peace movement are very much attuned to this danger or that danger, but I think very few are actually thinking how we establish a just world economic order in the interest of every single country on the planet, because that is the only way how we will get to permanent peace. And that is what I wanted to say in the beginning.
Thank you, Helga, for that opening and overview of what's happening in the world. And I'm sure we'll get lots of reports today. We'll have plenty of people who are speaking on the opening discussion around activities that are happening in the world, but also I want to encourage people who are in the audience to jump in during the discussion period to report on what you're doing, the many different initiatives that are happening around the world, especially around UN Resolution 377. So we shall continue with our agenda. Next, we will go to President Donald Ramotar, the former president of Guyana. And thank you so much for joining us today, making time, President Ramotar, for this important discussion. Please go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As Helga just said, the situation in the Caribbean is becoming also pretty dangerous and can very well develop into a hotspot. In speaking of the situation in Venezuela and the United States, I am conscious that Venezuela has made and is making a claim for 2/3 of Guyana, a claim that is absolutely unjustified since the borders between Guyana and Venezuela has been settled since 1896. Venezuela respected the border until 1962, when by US instigation, they began to question their war. The then Venezuelan government did this at the instigation of the US that was trying to stop independence from coming to Guyana on the grounds that Dr. Jagan's People's Progressive Party was going to establish a second Cuba. And that was the first time that term was used, about a second Cuba being created. President Chavez had recognized this, and on more than one occasion, he said this problem was not a Guyana-Venezuela problem, but a United States instigated one. I'm also very conscious of the fact that the United States has now publicly declared its support for Guyana and its readiness to assist with the defense of Guyana's border, a welcome change from its position of 1962. In relation to the United States military buildup in the South Atlantic, close to Venezuela, I view this as a very dangerous development. For many decades, led by Chedi Jagan, we fought for the Caribbean to be a zone of peace. This act now of a buildup of US military forces in the Caribbean, this act threatens the peace in the region and can begin the militarization of this region, which no doubt can lead to destabilization of Latin America and the Caribbean. In our region, fear is a big factor in the US dealing with the countries of the region. Fear of sanctions, because many of the countries are very small countries, some with even less than 100,000 people. And they are fearing consequences of sanctions, recognizing that it is sanctions that has created a lot of problems for the Cuban people and for the people of Venezuela as well. It is not what they're doing internally, but more so external sanctions that has created difficulty for them. As the US continues to pursue regime change, the present targets are still Cuba and Venezuela. We have seen already that the finance minister in Grenada has been sanctioned because the government of Grenada has refused the US instructions to break its contract with Cuba on the employment of Cuban medical personnel. And many other countries in the region are in fear and are succumbing to this demand by the United States. We see the blatant sanctions against a judge in Brazil. This is a unprecedented interference in the affairs of Latin America's strongest state. In relation to the buildup of the United States forces in the region, its pretext is the fight against drug trafficking, and drugs that are going to the United States. But I think it's a very poor pretext that they have chosen. I've just managed to read an article by Pino Alachi, a former UN anti-drug agency director from 1997 to 2002. And he said Venezuela's collaboration with the United Nations anti-drug was one of the best, with the exception only of Cuba. And he questioned really the existence of this cartel, de los soles. The main issue, in my view, and in the view of many others in the region, it's not drugs, but oil. Oil has been recently discovered in Guyana a few years ago. Oil is they're being drilling for oil right now in Jamaica. Trinidad and Tobago has invited ExxonMobil to look for oil into its area as well. And of course, that Venezuela has the largest reserve of oil in the world. And I think that is the main objective, to take control of this is a region that's full of natural resources. And I say this because in 2025, according to Mr. Alachi, the UN Office for Drugs and Crime, in a report, only spoke about a very small amount of drugs from Colombia that was passing through Venezuela to the United States and Europe. According to the UN, Venezuela has consolidated its status as a territory free from the cultivation of cocoa leaves, cannabis, and similar crops, as well as from the pressure of international criminal cartels. He pointed out in other reports, given the comparison of drugs produced in Colombia and Ecuador, Guatemala, and other places, how can an organized group, Cartel de Sols, be attracting this kind of attention in the anti-drug forces? Ecuador, it is said in this same article that 57% of the banana containers leaving from Ecuador are sometimes carrying drugs with them. The European Union produced a detailed report on the situation with drugs in the region for 2025, and not once did it mention Venezuela as a problem, which clearly, very clearly, that this talk about drugs is a pretext. As the United States continue to pressure the region to change, the present target, as I mentioned, is Cuba and Venezuela. In passing, let me quickly say that we need new thinking to combat the drug scourge. Since the early 1970s, President Richard Nixon declared a war against drugs. And since then, the situation has not gotten better. It has gotten much, much worse. And it is very clear that purely military methods have failed to stamp out the drug trade or to even hamper it. And we should search for other paths to combat narco crimes, and not only to depend on this one method, which has obviously failed. The renewed interest of the US in our region is not, as I mentioned earlier, not drugs, but really the resources. Guyana has found oil, Suriname has oil, Venezuela itself is rich in oil, Jamaica and Trinidad are looking for oil, and the United States is tying up the region and isolating those governments that are not going along willingly with it. What is happening in our region, though, is directly linked to what is taking place in the United States itself and in the Middle East and Europe at large. It is a clear sign of desperation and a new aggressiveness on the part of NATO countries, particularly the US. For instance, in the Gaza, we know that almost 65,000 persons who could be confirmed are dead, but we know that thousands of others are lying beneath the rubble in the Gaza. Hundreds of others are now dying from starvation, many from diseases, curable diseases, and many, many people are losing their limbs. This is unprecedented in our modern world to be witnessing something like this happening, and it's allowed to happen. But Gaza is being used in order to destroy international laws and to destroy international institutions. We see the steps taken by the United States to prevent the Palestinian Authority, which generally is very supportive of the US, to come to the US to address the United Nations. And also Iran and other countries are being stopped from going to New York for this General Assembly session. And clearly, therefore, they cannot now be seen as being complicit with the genocide that is taking place in the United States, but they clearly seem to be a partner in the crime against humanity. And they clearly don't want, they're sabotaging every attempt at peace, as we just saw with the attack in Qatar against the Hamas's leadership. As far as Ukraine is concerned, we spoke about this very often, and it is absolutely certain that the ultimate objective that in beginning this fight against Russia, because this was a war that could have been avoided, was to try to weaken Russia, to destabilize Russia, and to blackmail Russia by having NATO exactly on its borders. I don't think that they calculated what would have happened. In any case, they forced Russia into a fight. And now we see that that has some boomerang effects. I believe a lot of what is taking place in in Germany, as far as the economy is concerned, and in France, which is now not only economic, but leading to political issues on the streets, and other European countries, is directly related to what I will now publicly say a failed attempt to destabilize Russia in this regard. And as far as the ending of the conflict is concerned, I'm hearing that there's some optimism that this is happening, which I welcome. But I want to say that the best guarantee to Ukraine's security is Russia's security. The Ukrainians cannot have security at the expense of Russia. And the best way for them to have the full security is to deal with the causes of the crisis and to respect Russian security as well. And the fact that the land that they're talking about, they could have preserved that with the Minsk Accord, but I think the time has passed for that, and they must concede because these people voted in referenda to join with Russia. So I think a lot of these problems are connected, and I look forward to our discussions. I know that I'm running off my time.
Well, thank you, President Ramotar. It's always, your contributions are always important and very thoughtful, and we appreciate you coming on and presenting today. So thank you so much for that. So we shall continue with our agenda. Next, I'd like to go to, this is Shakeel Ramay, who's a political economist and CEO of the Asian Institute of Eco-Civilization Research and Development. Thank you so much for joining us, and please go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Madam Helga, for inviting me for this very important panel. I think what the president was saying, he was saying absolutely right. But I will confine myself to my topic, which has been assigned to me today. I will be talking about SCO to some extent. So the theme of my presentation is SCO Summit 2025, a step toward a multipolar or a multi-block world. Because we have to keep in mind, either our efforts will create a multipolar world or a multi-block world. If we have to create a new multi-block world, so then there is no benefit of these all efforts. In this context, I will run through the SCO. So why this organization is important in this context, either it will be contributing to a multipolar world or the multi-block world. First of all, if we have to look or analyze any organization, so there is a power nexus of any organization to measure its strength. Number one, so what is the financial power? Financial power does not mean what is only the size of GDP. It also means how it can run the global financial system in terms of the trade, debt, or the use of our money. Second, the communication power. So organization, what does that organization have the communication power to dominate? And the third is the military power. So how much it can protect itself, defend its members. In this context, SCO is a unique organization. Number one, this is a partnership-based organization. It denotes other mentality of the alliance building. Then it has 4 nuclear powers. I think it's the only regional organization which have 4 nuclear power. And the 2 nuclear power, they are quite volatile. Pakistan and India, they have come after each other after some time. And then it has 2 superpowers. One, China as a rising superpower, and other, Russia, the resurging superpower. That makes the world whether the 3 superpowers are competing. One is declining superpower, which we want to maintain its status, the USA, and the other is rising China, and the third one is resurging Russia. So in this context, 2 are the member of this organization. Then its philosophy is development hold the master key. And the 5th, dialogue over the confrontation. So it always promotes dialogue is important than the confrontation. And they have put forward many examples The first example was the resolution of border dispute between China, Russia, and some Central Asian states. It is I think, the only model which has helped to solve those issues peacefully. Then, if you look at the security dimension, in the recent meeting of SCO, so a comprehensive security threat and challenge center has been identified to be created. It will have 4 elements, or the 4, you can say, the tentacles. Number 1, information security. As I already described, to check the strength of an organization, you have to look into the communication power. So in that part, the organization is trying to establish its credential in the communication power. The second center will be organized crimes. That is trafficking and smuggling and everything. And the third one is counter narcotics. And the fourth is the main comprehensive center to steer the whole process of that center. And on the economic side, I'm running quickly. After that, we can discuss. On the economic side, so organization is emerging as a big economic bloc also through its development strategy. And the latest development strategy is the Development Strategy 2035. It has identified the sustainable and common development will be the goal of that strategy and the SCO. Common development is a different concept from what we have learned from the capitalism. So the common development means any growth or development model must take care of the welfare of the people and then enhance the connectivity. This region needs that infrastructure and investment. Financial cooperation. On the financial cooperation, SCO has taken 2 very important steps. Number 1, it has created a consortium of the state banks of all the member countries. So intra-SCO consortium of all the state banks of member countries. Second, this year, so it has been decided the SCO Development Bank will be created. And that SCO Development Bank, it is hoped that it will be dealing other than the dollar. If it would be creating other than the dollar, it would be means, so SCO will be trying to create its financial power also. That is very important. Then if you look at some inter-SCO trade and the GDP, so its trade has been increased immensely. In 2021, its inter-SCO trade was only $463 billion. And in 2024, it was $725 billion US. And the major push came due to the war in Ukraine. Because after the war in the Ukraine, Russia increased its trade with China and India. And other countries also enhanced their trade within the bloc. And then we look at the, I will say, the global governance. That is another initiative which has been discussed at this meeting, at the meeting of SCO. But before coming to that, if we look at the SCO structure right now, and it's a priority where it's moving, it's give us a very strong sense that the SCO is trying to create a multipolar world, not a multi-block world. But the question is, can SCO survive in the environment due to its approach and the philosophy? Because if we look at the SCO works on the principle of partnership, not alliances, but it has to compete with some other alliances like NATO, like other Western alliances. So those alliances, they have the binding to each other. If any member has been attacked or any member's security have been challenged, so all the members will go to help him. Even if you look in the case of the Ukraine is not a member of the NATO, but the whole Europe and West is behind the Ukraine. But in SCO, there is no such possibility. So every member can decide its own. Russia is the major pillar of the SCO, but it is fighting its war alone. A partnership-based approach, which is the strength of this organization, can be turned into the weakness. Because member will feel if we are attacked due to that partnership organization, so that's mean we don't have any backing of any other organization because they have to fight alone. In this way, the other alliances, they can go on to hunt one after the other countries. They have started with the Russia. They were thinking they will take down the Russia, then they can take down the China, and other countries will fall in the line. So maybe to survive this shock, the SCO maybe have to redefine its partnership-based structure. Maybe it's have to move toward a hybrid model. So where you don't make so many pushes, but you only say that if some country is being attacked, we will defend you. Not going to attack any other country, but to defend the country. It will give a voice and also give the confidence to the members, so that they are in an organization which will help them at the time of the need. But the other thing, which is make also these organizations a strong contender for creating a multipolar world, is initiative of global governance. President Xi Jinping has rightly identified we have problems. Cold War mentality is still here. So the world is not fair. So we have to create a new model of the governance. So at this time, this proposal carries a 5 key principles. So every principles, if we look at that, it has a value in the contemporary world. So they are talking about people-centric approach. They are talking about focus on taking the actions, not just the talks, and a multilateralism, and everything which we need at this point of the time are lag in the existing global structure it has. But then now we have to wait for the final outcome, because right now this is a vision. There's no practical framework or the action plan for the future. So how China will be framing or taking the actions, how the SCO members will be taking action to make global governance initiative the part of the global structure. Or through that global governance initiative, China and the members, they want to reform the system, or they want to create a new global order. So that will be the fundamental question. So how it will be done. So that's why we have to wait for the next few months. So how the framework or the institutional actions are being taken to define or take the global governance initiative forward. And lastly, we have to also to understand global governance initiative, why President Xi has been proposed it in the context of the global problems or the challenges in the global governance. Maybe we also need to understand the Chinese governance system, because the Chinese governance system tells us how China is governing its country from the centuries. And from there, we can learn the lesson. We can learn we can draw some conclusions that can be the next, you can say, the agenda or the next system of China in the coming years, what China has been proposing on the global governance. For example, in Chinese governance model, 2 or 3 things are very important. Number 1, respect for the diversity. If you look at the China, so many ethnicity groups are living there, but you don't see any uphills or something like that. How China is respecting the diversity, giving the equal opportunity, and providing the unconditional justice to everybody. That is the real term respect to the diversity. It's not just talking, or you can live here, but you have to follow me, everything. No, they are allowed to do. Then second thing, China keep the people at the center of all policies and actions. That's what is needed right now. Right now, every action has been taken at the global level is most concentrated on the financial outputs, or the financial gains, or the financial control. But if the Chinese governance model can be interpreted in the terms of the global governance model, so the common development can be, the common prosperity can be the new goal. So what the world is struggling at this point to achieve the sustainable development goals, they can easily achieve those goals. And number 3 is a merit. So merit with high integrity, fairness, and selflessness. So this is the third most important character of the Chinese governance system. So if these characters come to the global governance, I think many challenges we are talking, or the unfairness, or the conflict, or anything, I think it can help to tackle those challenges. And the last point is the SCO must work on financial strength, because right now the real problem is the financial strength of some institutions. They are controlling the financial system, like the Israel and its members. They are controlling the financial system of the world. That's why they are committing the crimes against humanity with so much impunity. So maybe SEO, if they really want to create a new block, or sorry, new pillar, which is more appropriate and which will attract more people towards it should be concentrating and strengthening its financial system. And for that purpose, SEO can also build a cooperation with the BRICS, because BRICS also have certain elements which right now SEO does not have, especially on the economic term. So it can also bring the new dimensions, and the both organization can become a new global southern organization. Either so it can be turned into the Global South Cooperation Organization or the Southern Cooperation Organization. In terms of the SEO, Southern Cooperation Organization seems very important, very familiar, because the abbreviation will remain the same. So that is a few things which I want to say. If there is any question, so I will be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramay. This is very, very interesting, and thank you for really fleshing through this proposal that's being put forward by President Xi Jinping. I think these are really important points of discussion, and this idea around the Global South Cooperation Organization, I think, would probably take hold very quickly. So thank you so much for that. And I see people who have their hands up. Please be patient. I know you want to ask questions. We have a couple more speakers, but we will get to the discussion period quickly. So thank you again, Mr. Ramay. Next, we're going to go to Professor Fernando Garzon, who is an architect, urban planner, and leader of the Ecuadorian-Palestinian Union, and regular on the International Peace Coalition. Please go ahead, Mr. Garzon, Professor Garzon.
Gracias, Anastasia. Saludos a todos y a todas, en especial a Helga y a Denis, que nos acompaña. A los dos Denis, por cierto. Bueno, mi tema principalmente estaba referido a Palestina.
Especially has to do with Palestine, and I wanted to present some hard facts, what Helga has talked about, and President Ramotar as well, and also our friend Ramay, I believe. These are, number one, with regard to the Caribbean situation, there are nearly 25 to 30 military bases that are very specific. They're not only of the United States, they are also of other countries. The majority of them are from Europe. Bases, multiple factors involved in these bases. This gives us an idea of the real threats which are centered there. Another element which I think is very important to mention is that this is already having consequences, direct consequences, one way or another, on some of our countries. A few days ago, in fact, the 10th of September, we're talking about yesterday, the day before, there was a decree of the Ecuadorian government which says, literally, Article 1, we reject the influence and incidence of the Hamas and Hezbollah organizations and their connection with terrorist attacks that they may be carrying out on Ecuadorian territory. And there is a general statement which talks about specific actions that could be taken. This gives you an idea of the scope that this small development of a little ship or boat or motorboat, what happened to platform related to drugs, which we think is a lie, but it gives you an idea of the dimensions that these processes are taking on in the Caribbean and the threats against Venezuela. Very well. As we were saying, I wanted to mention particularly the subject of Palestine. In this regard, I want to note that there's special greetings. Hamdatuna, who is the president of the Palestinian Ecuadorian Union, and we are promoting with other organizations what is an international statement, which is about this from indignation towards development, peace. We want to summarize the 5 points to be very practical on the question of the issues we're talking about. Number one, we reject the issue of the assassinations and hunger in the greatest open-air concentration camps in the world, which is Gaza. This is because we have been talking about in the meeting of the Anti-Fascist International, which met in Caracas and elsewhere, which is a thesis which seemed to be somewhat absurd, but unfortunately it's becoming a greater and greater reality over recent months, which is the highest stage of fascism, this genocide. So we emphasize the importance of the resolutions which were carried out by the International Criminal Court for the arrest of the Israeli Prime Minister, and also the International Court of Justice because of South Africa's demands for genocide can be carried out by Israel. We all know about this. I want to emphasize them. We in our group have also emphasized the importance, and we send our full support to the international flotilla, which is on its way to Gaza, and we know that they're being attacked by Israeli forces today, as has happened with flotillas in the past, and there have been deaths in the past. Our second point, we have posed what also seemed, these 5 points are a kind of general strategy, but the carrying out the General Assembly of the United Nations, which is occurring right now in the United States, where we call on our second point that all states should promote and respect the Palestinian state. We know that right now it's an observer member, which it should be a full member. And in fact, the peace negotiations have to be elaborated so that they can negotiate on an equal basis. We also emphasize the possibility of there being negotiations with the presence of Palestinian delegations in New York at the United Nations. This can be posed that the center of this UNGA should be transferred to Geneva. It happened in the past. It happened with Yasser Arafat a few decades ago. So that he could speak on Palestinian rights and the recognition of them by all of the countries in the world at that time. When he had to go to Geneva to be able to talk about this. Their third point, and we think this is one of the most important topics, and in fact possibly determining ones. And I want to give you a detailed idea. We call on all the civil organizations and social leaders to call on international corporations that are carrying out genocide in Gaza, and we charge them of crimes which and universal crimes. You cannot go from being a president to be the head of a company, and because sooner or later they can be brought to trial, not only in their countries of origin, but they can be taken to court anywhere in the world. One example of this was Baltasar Garzon, when he carried out charges against Pinochet, a dictator, and this created a really critical situation in Great Britain, where Pinochet was hiding for a while. We all know about this case. And what we emphasize on this point is that we have to take into consideration the accounts presented by Francesca Albanese on the subject of genocide, which she presented on June 3rd, and we emphasize on this that this means that the financial companies and the military industry are the ones who are maintaining great investments, and not only in their countries of origin, but in fact all of the countries of the world. We saw that the study that was done, the 20 main international companies are all, almost with no exception, are many of our countries, in particular, especially all over Latin America, with no exception, through their subsidiaries, through franchises, different modalities. As Francesca Albanese says, they sometimes hide what they're doing or make their activities invisible. But these major companies, these financial companies in particular, for example, those tied to the dynasty, let's call it that, of the Rockefellers, or the dynasty also of cases in Europe, the city of London, the case of the Rothschilds, among others. Our fourth point, we have posed as well the importance of demanding, and this is a point which has gone viral, in the case of the importance which Petro of Colombia said that a peaceful and armed forces, or armed forces of the peace, for them to enter Palestine. And this is important to keep into consideration because, as Helga pointed out, there are really two reference points in the United Nations, one to the Uniting for Peace, which was November 3rd of 1950 at the United Nations, and that was applied on two occasions, which decided what the resolution says is that it can convoke an extraordinary period of the sessions of an emergency if the Security Council, because it lacks unanimity of the permanent members, and it does not fulfill its responsibility for maintaining the peace and international security. In addition to this, there's another resolution, which is the World Meeting of the United Nations of 2005, determined that the responsibility to protect populations from genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. This is a standard on which there are legal and juridical backing to be applied today. So what many people have proposed, Helga has also emphasized this, the need to be able to fulfill these goals. Finally, we have also emphasized in our fifth point the political representation of the Palestinians and to have peace, sovereignty, and development allowed in Palestine in the framework of national unity, which the leaders of 14 movements have signed along the lines of the West Bank and Gaza, signed in 2024 in China. In fact, the Chinese government helped sponsor this, and other governments did so as well. This has been agreed to by almost 200 leaders and representatives of citizens groups from many parts of the world, especially Spanish-speaking world, but also inside the United States, in Gaza itself. And this is a framework for these kinds of orientations that we propose can have an impact on the decisions that taken by the governments and the people to be taken, which cannot and which have to take up presentations which are positive for all people of the world. I finally want to emphasize this Nazi policies, which has made our hearts ache all around the world. These threats against Palestine and Gaza is of great pain for all of us, but we can't lose our objectivity and we can't let them seize the narrative. We have to keep the narrative based on experience and the grammar. This is the hope. The decision of the peoples, of governments, and people such as this International Peace Coalition contribute to pose concrete solutions that will allow us, and we hope that that will be the case, to build peace with sovereignty and reconstruction and with integral development. That was the contribution that I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Garzon, for your contribution and the message, as well as reminding me that the Freedom Flotilla is making its way. And I wanted to just note that it was bombed a few days ago, and we should continue. There are many people who have come through the International Peace Coalition, who are regular participants, who have been on the flotilla, who are on the flotilla. So please keep an eye on this, share this, keep it in the media. We want to make sure that people who are participating in this humanitarian effort are safe. So I'll include the link in the chat as well. And thank you, Fernando, for this. Okay, we shall continue. So next, I'd like to go to Jacques Cheminade, who is the head of Solidarité and Progress Party of France, and longtime diplomat and friend. Please go ahead, Jacques Cheminade. You have the floor.
Well, the situation in France is not interesting as such. It becomes a rather decisive point of reference when you locate its dynamics in the context of the international situation. The visible part of the iceberg here, an accelerated collapse. There is no majority in our country for an articulated, truly sovereign policy. There is no more a prime minister. François Bayrou lost his vote of confidence before the National Assembly. President Emmanuel Macron appointed a new prime minister, his close ally and confidant, Sébastien Lecornu. Lecornu is nominally Gaullist, sovereignist, who has both betrayed Gaullism and sovereignism. He was a minister in the 7 past governments, Minister of the Armed Forces, as it's called here. Therefore, he represents nothing new, and its nomination has been felt like a provocation for the majority of the National Assembly and for most of the population. The point is that the wave of discontent hits now directly Macron himself. His rate of popular support stagnates at 15%. Yes, 85% of the population rejects him. Worst, Macron tries to be the leader of a warmongering coalition of the willing, of the E3, France, Germany, and Poland, of the E5, and whatever. There are as many E's emerging out of the alphabet as the number of the disunited states of Europe disintegrates. Macron's call for the sending of French military forces in Ukrainian territory is not only seen as providing targets for the Russian missiles, as declared Putin, but it is rejected by more than 2/3 of our population. Lecornu and Macron, more than just lame ducks, are volatile targets. The appointment of Lecornu is all the more perceived as a provocation that he was before, as I said, Minister for the Armed Forces that has organized the pro-Ukrainian military mobilization, reflecting the cause of the French deep state, or better said, the warmongers of Wall Street, the City of London, and Chatham House. The French General Secretary of the European and Foreign Affairs Ministry made on September 9 a declaration revealing how the opportunistic part of the French political civil service is mentally deranged. We are, she said, facing a time of predators. We are under the blows of our adversaries on the Ukrainian front, facing the MAGA networks and going through the shows of force in Tiananmen Square. A Putinian world of uninhibited foreign interferences. She called, of course, for rearmament, both militarily and informationally, and stressed that France, to be respected, has to be feared. Of course, France being financially quasi-bankrupt and about to be rated as such by Fitch and Moody's agencies. France has neither the money nor the weapons for what they pretend to do. It is a braggadocio, as our Italian friends would say. I think you say braggadocio. Then what are they expecting? What are they expecting? Here comes the decisive point. They expect Macron, Starmer, and Merz. They expect, with a divided and ruled British mind, to influence Donald Trump. They are obsequious with him as good courtesans trying to manipulate their king. True, they all came to Washington to bend in front of us, of Trump, but trying to bring him on their warpath. Playing both on his warmongering allies, the French Foreign Affairs Minister Jean-Noël Barrot is very close to Lindsey Graham, playing on Trump's fits and his rage not to have solved Ukrainian and Palestine issues. And they play mainly on his stablecoin entourage of multi-billionaires. Le Monde, the French newspaper of record, said bluntly on its September 6 issue, the coalition of the winning is suspended on Trump's choices. Macron has declared that he's going to recognize the Palestinian state and this UN General Assembly session. If he does it, and he may do it, to try to improve his image, well, it would unfortunately mean nothing, nothing concrete. He does not demand a weapons embargo. He doesn't demand a trade cutoff, and he doesn't call for a viable Palestine state. That of LaRouche's was his plan that he has no excuse to ignore. Therefore, what he says is presently meaningless. He doesn't demand the withdrawal of the Israeli Defense Forces from Gaza to stop the colonization of the West Bank, and he doesn't require the liberation of Marwan Barghouti, the man who represents a key factor of unity among all the Palestinian factions. As everything that Macron does, he stays in the middle of the Rubicon and then steps back. The opposition is not a real alternative. They present just demands on social issues, just demands, but with no basis on a shift in foreign policy that would make these demands possible to be taken. The ultra-left and left, so-called, have all supported within their program of the New Popular Front the sending of weapons to Ukraine and impotently call at the same time for world peace, while the so-called right-wing and National Rally support Zelensky and call for a referendum on immigration, which diverts the attention from the fight against the Anglo-American oligarchy and instead promotes the crazy idea, the insane idea, that the Muslims and Islam are the worst enemy of France. Jordan Bardella, head of the National Rally and pretending to be prime minister, went to Israel to embrace Netanyahu, told him that he is the bulwark of the West, and shook hands with Smotrich, the crazy Smotrich. He also applauded Zelensky in the European Parliament. Under such conditions, you have small groups and popular figures like a Charles Gave, together with new websites that call for all sensible people to leave France and go to other Western countries, or even to Russia, supposed to be lands of plenty. At this point, you may think that I am pessimistic. On the contrary, I see rising forces of insurrection leading towards a winter and a fall and a winter of discontent. The problem is that they are like passengers of an airplane who are understanding that there is no pilot, or that the one in charge is a failed one. They may rush to the cockpit to take over, with no idea of how to fly the plane. We have therefore to open their eyes on the world in which the plane is flying and educate them on what is happening with the global majority and our fight for the Oasis Plan, and mainly about a new financial international architecture, a new architecture based on mutual development and sovereignty, Helga LaRouche's call. In that battle against both evils of Anglo-American domination and chauvinism, more and more people start to think of themselves as patriots and world citizens. This Saturday, I am invited by an assembly of sovereignists to speak about what is required to shift our way of thinking to that level. We are starting to get a growing interest from left and right-wing circles on our ideas and mobilization. For example, a leader of the extreme left-wing union, Solidaire, told us that every time he has to confirm his commitment, he listens to our videos on the British colonial influence in the Middle East. Conservative medias, not the big control one, of course, but influential as expression of dissidents, accept to publicly discuss about Lyndon LaRouche's life and organize and the organization and the life of Lynn, which before were formerly taboos. On November 8th, we are going to have a day of mobilization in Paris with youth around our movement coming from the whole world. This is actually what is happening in France, above the scum of the political circus. As the poet says, the more the danger grows, the more grow what saves. Then Percy Shelley, shake your chains to earth like dew, which on sleep are falling on you. Ye are many, they are few.
Thank you, Jacques. Thank you for that. And it's actually helps to make clear what is happening in France, which I'm sure many people are looking at this wondering what is going on? Why are these things happening? And especially given the context of what's going on globally. Thank you so much for that, Jacques Cheminade. So I will continue. We have one more speaker. It's actually a video that was sent in from Mr. Jonathan Kuttab, who is a friend and regular participant of the International Peace Coalition. He's the co-founder of Nonviolence International and executive director of Friends of Sabeel North America. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us today live, but sent in an interview presentation. So please, if we could show that.
Yes, hello. This is Gerald Belsky with the Schiller Institute and the International Peace Coalition. And I'm interviewing right now Jonathan Kuttab, who is the executive director of the Friends of Sabeel North America, which is an organization of Palestinian Christians. He's also the co-founder, one of the co-founders of the Nonviolence International. He's been a longstanding human rights attorney and an activist in America and Palestine. Mr. Kuttab, I know you just came back from the region. I think you were in the West Bank. You've observed a number of things that's been happening there in terms of this genocide. Could you give me your observations of what you see going on right now in the region between Israel and Palestine?
Well, I can tell you that on the Palestinian side, there is a strong feeling of helplessness, but not hopelessness. A feeling that nobody is doing what they need to be doing to stop this from happening, and that it looks like it's going to continue and even spread to the West Bank, where the settlers are running amok. On the Israeli side, there is a strong feeling of impunity. We can do whatever we want. We know this is not acceptable to the rest of the world, but so what? They literally use the words, so what, in Hebrew. You'll be listening to commentators talking, yeah, there's all these problems. So what? Nobody is doing anything to stop us. And as long as we can get the United States and President Trump, who doesn't believe in rules anyway, or international law anyway, as long as he's on our side, we can do whatever we want. The attack on Qatar, we can violate another country, we can assassinate people, we can attack the flotilla in Tunis, we can do whatever we want. The huge sense of impunity and the lack of caring for what the rest of the world thinks or believes or does.
I know that this is an issue for yourself because you are a nonviolent person, but the principle of the UN Resolution 377 is that it can call for anything under the General Assembly. It can call for all these measures, which bypass the Security Council, rather, and it can also call for protective force. Now, some people think a protective force by itself is going to solve the problem. I think that it can bring to bear pressure on Israel and the United States by getting the pressure of the entire world, 2/3 of the General Assembly saying we want to protect people from this genocide, where you could actually stop this without it having to come to a military action, but a protective force simply standing there and entering in and demanding the right to stop this genocide, I think would be very important. And that's what we're calling for the UN to do. But we're adding one other feature to this, because to stop the genocide, you have to have a plan for reconstruction. That means instead of cutting off the food and water, we're going to have to bring new energy, new water resources. We call this the LaRouche Oasis Plan. And if you could get people on both sides to focus on that, we could get beyond this insane settler obsession with Greater Israel. What do you think of that overall approach to the UN General Assembly, which is going to have to take up action?
Well, there's definitely need for something like that. Collective action to protect civilians, to deal with rogue states which don't care about international law, to deal with the forced starvation, the forced removal of people, to deal with the systematic destruction of every building, every infrastructure, to deal with the blockading of food, water, medical supplies. We have some very serious threats to the human race that require collective action by all of us, by all the countries in the world. We cannot live in a total jungle where anybody can do whatever they want and the powerful can get away with literally murder and genocide with the entire world being silent.
Now, I know that you have been long calling for a dialogue with Hamas, that you have to talk to. Israel cannot get peace unless they talk to their adversary. Now, there was a negotiation. What's unclear is that exactly what this was all about. There were people negotiating, and Hamas was willing to consider some of the proposals that President Trump had put forward. And we know that Gershon Baskin, whom I've talked to in the past, was one of the negotiators. And he urged Hamas to forget Netanyahu, who clearly wants to keep the war going. But he said negotiate with Trump. What's unclear is in this attack, how much did the United States initiate it, or was it simply confronted with a fait accompli? Were there forces in the West which wanted it? But it clearly blows up the ability to have a peace negotiation if you're killing the negotiators. So what do you think about all that?
Well, I mean, I don't know what was in Netanyahu's mind, but clearly it was to prevent the negotiations from proceeding. And when you go and kill the negotiator, the chief negotiator, and you do it in a country which is doing the mediation, I think everybody who is not partisan, who is not totally biased, acknowledges that Netanyahu and the present Israeli government is not interested in negotiations.
Well, we know that there are certain forces in the West, particularly among the British. And I know you're aware of the role of the British having been born in Palestine. We've been insisting, Mr. LaRouche has long insisted over 50 years ago that the hidden hand in all of this is coming from the British. Do you have any thoughts about the role of the British in particular?
Well, I grew up in a society where my parents and their generation are emphatic that the British are behind every evil thing that's taking place in the world. They certainly have sown the seeds for disputes between India and Pakistan, between the Palestinians and Jews, between people in different parts of the world. The British used to rule. It was, the sun doesn't set on the British Empire. And with very few people and with a lot of manipulation, they set up the stage for much of the problems of the world. So yes, and many people think that they are also manipulating the United States itself to negative conclusions. In the Gaza war, they have participated from their air base in Cyprus. I've seen pictures of their routine spying flights over Gaza, providing information to the Israelis in real time. But my approach is we really need international law. We really need a collective human approach. And by we, I also include the Israelis. I think they're very short-sighted if they think that they can ignore the rest of the world and ignore international law and ignore international norms, that somehow because they have the current advantage right now and because they have the ear of Mr. Trump, who doesn't care and doesn't maybe even understand international law and how it operates, that somehow they can get an advantage. And I'd like to tell my Israeli friends that you are really overstepping, you are really destroying the fabric of international law and international solidarity, which you will desperately need at some future point. You cannot just rely on your military strength. You really need to have an international order that is not based on pure military strength, that is based on understanding, solidarity, cooperation, and a world order that serves everybody, not just the powerful. And Israel, you need that more than anybody else.
I'd like to finally just ask you something we talked about before we started recording this interview, which is what would it take for nations to support something like the Uniting for Peace action to bypass the Security Council? Right now, you don't think any nation has yet committed to it, but what would it take for nations to sign on to something like that, collective action now?
I think it would take courage, it would take foresight, it would take a principled belief in collective human endeavor. It will take pressure from ordinary people, civil society, intellectuals, professors. What do we need to do in order to live on this planet and to thrive? We have the possibility. For the first time, I think, in human history, we have the possibility to thrive, for everybody to move out of poverty, for everybody to enjoy good health, for everybody to enjoy education, proper housing, a good life. We can eliminate entirely, we can eliminate poverty. We can eliminate many of the diseases. We can eliminate ignorance and provide education to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kuttab, for sending that in. And I'll also just add that he is an international human rights lawyer, as well as a former advisor during the Oslo Accord. So he has been in the middle of many of these discussions around Palestine and Israel for many years. So I thank him again for his Mr. Kuttab's comments and thoughts on the matter. So what I'd like to do right now, I'd like to go to Helga Tsepp-LaRouche for a comment before we move on to the discussion period.
Well, I think a lot of important topics were brought up. I think that we should, unless there is a reversal that, the Palestinian will get visas, if that does not occur, then we should, with the IPC, I would suggest all include in our mobilization that the UN General Assembly be moved to Geneva, because I think, that is the absolute precondition for any even a semblance of justice, because, Palestinians are obviously the country, the people who are in the middle of the being targeted for elimination. So I would suggest that for your consideration. Otherwise, I can only say that I just got a message, which reported that in response to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, AOL, Cortez, what's her first name?
Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah, Ocasio-Cortez. She is canceling her appearance at a weekend rally in North Carolina, obviously in response to the perceived threat to all politicians who have a distinct view on these matters. So, I mean, will that be followed by all other people? Will that be the end of politics in the United States and elsewhere? It just shows you that, we really need to move to a completely new paradigm, which was outlined by Shakeel Ramay. And I also touched upon it with the Global Governance Initiative of President Xi Jinping. And I have been convinced for a very long time that we cannot solve all the different problems one by one, because we are involved in a systemic breakdown. And when you have a condition like that, you need to address the root causes. And that means, we have to go back to the principles of natural law, of sovereignty, of the UN Charter, and create a new system based on these foundations of the UN Charter and other documents like the 5 Principles of Peaceful Coexistence, to build a system which functions. And I think unless we do that, I'm very much concerned that it will get worse and worse in all these different fields. Now, concerning the role of the British Empire, I would like to remind especially the Americans on this call, that the role of the British subversion of the American Republic needs to be addressed, because the whole unipolar world, as it was pursued in the post-Cold War period by the neocons in the United States, was based on the special relationship with the British Empire. And that is the root cause, because at a certain point, the British establishment decided to subvert the American elites to adopt the model of the British Empire to rule the world together. And I think unless that is clearly understood, we will not be able to solve these problems. And I think the upcoming 250th anniversary of the American Revolution and American War of Independence is a very good reason to remind Americans what America was founded for and why the principles of the American Republic are fundamentally opposite to what the British Empire stands and stood for. So I would basically urge people to, really join our fight to go into the new paradigm, sign the newest statement by the Schiller Institute, that the Western nations must join the global majority if we are supposed to come out of this crisis. So please sign this document, circulate it widely, and let's all move so that the people in the Western countries develop an understanding, why there is an alternative, because the mainstream media do generally absolutely underreport, slander, mischaracterize, as if that would be the fight between the democracies and the autocracies, and nothing could be further from the truth. So sign this new statement by the Schiller Institute, and more importantly, help us to organize as many people to understand what that is all about.
Thank you, Helga. I've posted the link for people to grab it in the Zoom. If you're on any other platform across the board, you can go to the schillerinstitute.com and it'll be one of the first items on the top of the website, and you can sign it there. I'd like to see if any of the other speakers who've spoken thus far, President Ramotar, Professor Garzon, or Jacques Cheminade, Shakeel Ramay, if any of you have any comments or thoughts before we move on to discussion with the audience. If not, go ahead,
I
Mr.
can, yeah. I just want to say a very small thing. Fundamentally, two things we need to understand, and everybody, especially the countries who are engaged in different types of the conflicts. Number one, conflict is not sustainable. Only peace is sustainable. Today or tomorrow, you will have to obey by the peace. So it's better to come to the peace without so many casualties. Number two, with military power, you can win the war, but you cannot win the peace. You can win the peace only with the development and with the justice. So everybody here, as the Madam Helga always talk about, and I really like her ideas. And yesterday we were talking, so I was telling her, so I follow you very closely because the ideas I like, you are promoting peace and development. So these are the fundamental requirements of people: peace, development with the social justice. Otherwise, we will keep engaged and we will keep killing each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramay, for that. And I see Professor Garzon, you have your hand raised.
Sí, gracias. Un comentario.
Thank you. A comment I think is important to make. We have said that there is a process connected to is related to resources, is correct. But I think is also, you can see something beyond that. One is the control of the territory, control to these things are happening around the country with many perspectives to the future to have bigger conflicts. About the importance of the treatment of the natural resources as the target connected to these interventions that are happening in several parts of the world, we also have to take into account aspects that are more, that are deeper. One is the control of the territory as part of the, to control the world, and also the infrastructure development, and also the territory control is connected to future confrontations and wars. And also with respect to Venezuela, in the future, we will have critical situations, and they are connected not only to the oil, but also to the control of the territory. The other element is connected to the same reflection. It's not only the control of the resources itself, but is in order to impose a system, a modality of economy that is linked to the extracting of resources and is connected to the investment, to the form of trade and imposition of governments that allowed this type of incursions. And it goes beyond the knowledge of the resources of one or other country. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Garzon. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to just quickly say.
Go ahead.
I think what is happening, I think we can expect more serious problems in the future, because what is really happening is a desperate attempt on those forces that had enjoyed dominance throughout the world, particularly in the South, and they're afraid that they're losing some of their influence, and that is what we're seeing, this terrible aggressiveness. And I think it has accelerated since the formation of the BRICS, and BRICS is offering a clear alternative to what the old system was, where you had this total domination from United States and Europe on our economies, And this is a desperate attempt to regain control, to regain lost grounds, to put it that way, and not to allow BRICS to become an alternative. And because the rise of China's economically, the United States is not alone now with economic influence. They are now resorting to more and more force. And that is why they're using Israel to destroy every aspect of international law and international institutions, so that in the context of no laws, the survival of the fittest, they see themselves coming out on top of this. So that is why I think that the world, we have to be prepared for more aggression and more acts of aggression and sabotage, more from the West. The good thing is also that the BRICS is growing stronger and stronger. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's an important point to make. Thank you, President Ramotar. Jacques?
Yes, just I have been extremely moved by the
Sí,
interventions
me conmovió
from
mucho
Kuttab
la
in
intervención del señor Kuttab en
Excuse me,
particular.
the Spanish interpreter is in the wrong channel.
I may speak in Spanish if you want.
Go ahead, Jacques.
No, I've been very moved by those who are on the front and who express that they call for justice, that they don't despair, and that they don't fall into hate or into rejection of the other or the contrary. And I was thinking about what Sheila said, that the way towards reason passes through the heart, and that our fight for a new architecture, a new peace architecture based on common development and security, has to be related inside ourselves with a change in the way of thinking, a change in the way of being seen and heard by other people, and then we change them. And I think this is what expresses the International Peace Coalition, that from all sides of given, let's say, origins or even opinions, there is the same commitment to speak and listen to the other and then act. On that basis, we are intervening also in Paris on the 15th with our declaration on the resolution 377, the United for Peace. And of course, we have in French Helga's declaration, and we are distributing it. So this creates in the minds of people the sense that there is something that they did not know. And this exploration of a known territory inside of ourselves and for other people is what creates the possibility for a change. I think that, as a chorus, is what we express in the International Peace Coalition. And we should continue and mobilize for that.
Thank you, Jacques, and thank you for letting us know of the activities that you and others will be doing in France this coming 15th as well. I think what we're going to do now, since it's 15 till, we will move to the discussion period. I'll make the general announcement, and then we'll do that. If you are on any of the platforms, Rumble, YouTube, X, if you would like to participate in the discussion period, you must be registered. You can go to schillerinstitute.com, and right on the top of the page is the IPC, International Peace Coalition sign-up page. And just register yourself for that, and you will receive an email with the Zoom link. And with that, Dave, just let me know when we have cut the stream.